I'm Aaron Sagers, and this is Talking Strange. Hello, spooky nerds, and welcome back to Talking Strange, the Paranormal Pop Culture Show. I'm Aaron Sagers. Today I wanted to share a couple stories of very weird high strangeness, and I'm always asking for stories from you guys, and you delivered. First up, where I'm recording this during the lead up to Easter weekend, and it's okay if you're not necessarily a particularly religious person. Easter can still be a fun time loaded with candy, colorful clothing, lots of pastels, maybe an Easter egg hunt. Peeps. I like Peeps. I'm not afraid to admit it. I'm a big fan of the Peeps. So even if you're not into it for the religious purposes, you could still enjoy Easter for the... well, let's face it, the very pagan-influenced eggs and Easter bunny. And that's kind of how we're getting into this story, because this story was written up by a friend of the show and a loyal supporter, Alicia. She's from our Patreon group over at patreon.com/Aaron Sagers, a.k.a. the Geeky Creepy Tiki Travels Patreon. So I had asked if anyone had had any bizarre Easter holiday stories, and she didn't disappoint. So we're going to hear her story. But then after that, stick around, because we're going to travel to Carson City, Nevada, for another odd story involving legends, entities, and some serious WTF elements as experienced by a deputy attorney general. Okay, let's get to Alicia's story. Hey, Aaron. I'm writing you today because I promised to send you my story about the time I met a real-life Easter bunny. Trust me, I know just how ridiculous this is going to sound, but I assure you, this really happened. Back when I was just 4 years old, my grandpa had a massive stroke and could no longer talk, walk, feed himself, or take care of himself in any other way, and he came to live with us. We had 3 bedrooms in our home, and I had 3 brothers. So I got the boot from my bedroom and was relocated to the couch to make room for Grandpa. Honestly, there was a TV in the living room, so I didn't even mind. Total access to all the shows I wasn't supposed to watch, though mostly horror. I was always a weird kid. Plus, I needed noise in order to sleep anyway, and this was way better than the radio. Anyway, it was the night before Easter Sunday, and I woke up in the middle of the night to some rustling noises. I had fallen asleep with the TV on, so there was a faint glow in the room, a habit I still have to this day. The couch that I was asleep on faced the center of the room, and there was a buffet behind it with space for a sort of hallway, if you will. I peeked over the back of the couch to where the noise was coming from. There, on the floor, next to the buffet, was my Easter basket. And a giant man-sized bunny moving things around in it. Let me take a pause here to describe what this bunny looks like. The bunny had a shape of a person, long legs and arms with hands. He had a bunny face with long ears. One ear stood straight up and the other was slightly bent forward. He had white fur, but not like a costume. Actual fur. He was wearing yellow shoes and a purple bow tie, but no other clothing. I must have gasped or made some noise because the bunny looked up at me. Our eyes locked, and then the bunny stood up and put an index finger to its mouth, telling me to be quiet. He then went back to getting other baskets ready. When finished, he stood up again, waved at me, and disappeared into the kitchen. He was as tall as our kitchen doorway. His ears were even taller. After that, I heard our back door open, then close. I went to my basket, took some candy out, and ate it before going back to sleep. In the morning, I got in trouble for eating candy in the middle of the night. I'd left the wrappers on the floor by the couch. I told my brothers about the Easter Bunny. Now, my brothers were much older than me, ages 13 through 16, and they found the whole story to be hilarious and called me all sorts of names. When they finally stopped laughing, they tried to convince me it was just a dream. Except it wasn't. I had seen what was in my basket, and it was a new Barbie. That same Barbie was indeed in my basket that morning. I was going to say something to my parents, but after dealing with my brothers, I was pretty deflated. Later, when I was a teenager, I did ask my parents if they ever dressed up as the Easter Bunny, but they answered a firm no. That didn't really surprise me, as they aren't really that type of parents anyway. So, all these years later, I am left wondering, what did I actually see? To this day, I can see the bunny so clearly in my mind. The picture is as clear to me as my memories of my grandfather who passed away 2 years later. I know in my heart this did happen. Did one of my brothers manage to get a hold of an adult-sized bunny costume that looked real? Where would they have gotten the money? What would be the point to go through all that trouble for the slim chance that I'd wake up and see them? It was an emotional and stressful time in our household, and our minds are amazing things. Did I manifest this Easter bunny? Was it an egregore? My parents didn't act strangely the next day, so was the bunny adding things to the baskets my parents had left out, or what was he doing? Recently, someone mentioned the theory that when we have an alien encounter, our memory is altered into something that is more comforting. I don't know if a giant rabbit is more comforting, but I guess anything is possible. In the end, I will never have the answer, but this experience taught me to never doubt someone else's story. To this day, when I hear people talk about something that happened to them, I remind myself of this. If I wasn't there, then I don't really know what happened to them. Hell, even when I am there, I don't really know what happened to me. So, there's my story about the time I busted the Easter Bunny delivering my basket. Talk to you soon. Stay spooky, Alicia. And then she adds that she had sent this before and was sending it again because, quote, life is too short to not share our weird experiences. I agree, Alicia, and thank you so much for the story. That is a crazy story. And I do love that theory that some alien encounters, people that see these entities or whatever they are, their mind kind of shapes them, forms them into something that is recognizable or comforting. And you have to think about the fact that, like, in a child's mind, the Easter Bunny or Santa Claus is as real as their parents. It's something that actually seems to exist. So, maybe that alien visitor or extra dimensional or whatever it is pays a visit, pops into your brain, says, "Oh crap, they've spotted me. I need to appear as something that is non-threatening. They believe in this giant humanoid bunny or this jolly man in red delivering Christmas presents. So here you go. I'll appear as that." What do you guys think? Alien manifestation? Was it actually the Easter Bunny? I will share on top of this. I may have talked about this before. That my mom, my own mother, tells me, and I heard this story going back forever, not since I've started doing this weird job, that when she was a little girl, It was also, I think, the night before Easter Sunday, and she saw the Easter Bunny outside of the window that was on her childhood front door, I believe in Ohio. Saw like this man-sized bunny with these large ears, and her whole family was gathered in the living room and found it to be very strange. And I guess no one else had seen it. She swears by that to this day. Do you have a similar story? A sighting of some Easter bunny, Santa Claus, anything like this? I've collected a lot of stories about Santa Claus sightings throughout the years from adults, and that one is like that's an interesting one to get into. Okay, thank you again, Alicia. Now let's shift gears to the Fox Brewery and Pub in Carson City, Nevada. Now, I love Carson City. It is a charming and historic town. It's the state capital, and yet it feels like a cool sort of suburby area, but still a town, and then these old casinos that are pretty scenic. And the Fox Brewery is a great place to hang out at. Yes, they have some incredible beers, but also just a good vibe. And it is situated in the former St. Charles Hotel, which is one of the oldest continuously operating hotels in the state, constructed in 1862. It definitely has a haunted reputation. I have stayed there before. I did not experience anything spooky there, but like I said, I have enjoyed more than one lovely meal and some pints at the Fox Brewery. Anyhow, it was here that I gathered a few months back with my buddy Bill Doty, director and documentarian, and also documentarian of Ghostumentary. Check it out. It's on Amazon Prime. So I was on a spooky travel tour through the Reno Tahoe Territory in Nevada. And I sat down and recorded some interviews with folks at the Fox Brewery. Now, one of the most compelling people I met was someone I was frankly surprised was willing to go on record with his story. His name is Jordan Laub. He is a deputy attorney general for the state of Nevada. Now, Jordan was not speaking on behalf of the state or his clients. I need that to be clear. He was not talking in an official capacity. He just wanted to share his incredible story, and I am grateful that he put himself out there because it is a story of high strangeness. It is very compelling. So thank you, Jordan. So let's get to it. This story that he shared at the Fox Brewery in Carson City.
I mean, dude, I'm so excited to be. I like this place. I like the brew pub. You hang out here a lot? Is this like one of your spots?
I do. I
Yeah.
work at the state. I currently serve as Deputy Attorney General.
You're right over
for
there.
the
Is where
state
your
of Nevada.
office is.
Yeah, it was one of the DAGs as they call it, but I represent state lands and Dieter and Office of the Controller. So obviously none of these statements reflect my clients or my official capacity, but I'm happy to sit down and talk to you at a bar that I know well. And
Dude, well, cheers to that, man.
Cheers.
Thank
Cheers.
you. Yeah, we're having a bit of booze before we talk booze.
Well, we can have a beer. That's fine.
Dude, I had to stop you from saying too much because you started laying out some pretty cool stories. So I want you to share with me. I mean, first off, you grew up in South Lake Tahoe, right?
Born and raised in South Lake Tahoe, that's right. So my family first came here in the 1930s as immigrants escaping Romania when the getting was good for the Jews. Mm-hmm. And we had settled first in San Francisco and then had come over here. And so my family has been approaching nearly 100 years for legal service here in the area.
Okay. And what was it like to grow up in South Lake Tahoe from like the legend side, story side? Because, we rolled through there and there were some cool stories, but also, so it takes a little bit of effort to get people to share some of those stories. So any crazy stuff happened to you growing up there?
It did. We could range from a couple different topics. I could take you to the paranormal ghost side, and I could take you to the extraterrestrial side, as well as some folklore growing up in the area. I think part of what makes this area so unique isn't just the topography or really the history, because America isn't that old. You can go to Prague or other cities and you'll find 2,000 years of history, but for what we have a lot of it. And I think part of that culture in this area has a certain mystique that's drawn people for thousands of years and will continue to do so. It could be its beauty or it could be something more. For me, it's both.
Mm-hmm. All right, so you did mention, we're going to tee this one up. You did mention the submarine, South Lake Tahoe, a story that I'm familiar with.
That's right.
Lay it on me. What have you heard, and do you think it's legit?
Well, we've heard of Cousteau's tale of a submarine and his famous statement that, I don't want to disclose what was down there. And growing up on the lake, I think we all kind of have an experience of growing up on the lake where we spend more time usually there than most people do on other lakes. Yeah, it's true that there's a lot of lake towns, but what makes Lake Tahoe special is there's kind of the infrastructure between both California and Nevada that establishes that network where you can continue to return. There's gas stations. So there's enough history there that dates back to the native culture from the Paiutes and Shoshones through here. There's a certain feeling when you're on a jet ski or a watercraft or on a boat and you look down near where the Walker Lane Belt and the ancient land wave that came from the landslide at the deepest point of the lake, which is about 3,000 feet or more. When you're really at that deepest part and bubbles start to come up, it does give a different sense in that area. So I've always sought to have submarine tours or things, and I think people dismiss it as, that would be boring. It's just rocks and piles of rocks. But it doesn't feel that way, and it certainly wasn't reported that way of Cousteau. And as I've passed Cave Rock, only on one other occasion did I have a similar experience in my lifetime, where I saw an oceanography submarine getting pulled out of Cave Rock, and I had asked my parents to pull over, but they wouldn't. But I looked over as we passed Highway 50 just briefly, and I looked over at the submarine down there. And I saw the expressions and the hustled movement, and it can be dismissed as just people busy loading a submarine, but without more, I'm not sure I'm confident there isn't anything at the bottom of the lake. There may be something there, and it's, if you doubt it, go to the deepest point in the lake, jump off the boat without a life jacket, and look down.
No, sir.
Tell me you feel different.
That's not what I want to do. What would you think is down there? If you're going to take a wild swing.
Well, if we want to segue to the next topic, I mean, there's a lot of a mob influence that was in casinos in the past, right? We've had the famous, at the time, Horizon bombing in the 80s. We've had the building that I was associated with that my dad had purchased in 2010, which was the Bills and Barney's Casino, where Richard Chartrand had put his car in reverse in Skyland and blown up. So the mob influence is heavy. I wouldn't be surprised to hear that you would find concrete shoes in quite a few individuals attached to those at the base of Lake Tahoe. That aside, I don't know. Unfortunately, a lot of the stories we hear that we dismiss as conspiracy theories early on, sometimes they turn out to be true. And the more paranormal we understand through these congressional investigations, what's coming out about alien or extraterrestrial activity, or that they belong or have some kind of presence near old lakes or cold lakes, Lake Baikal, for instance, Lake Tahoe, there's some truth to it. And I wonder if it's just because we just don't explore the depths of our bodies of water to find out.
Yeah. Well, wait, before I get to that, I want to go back to sort of the mob side of it real quick, because your dad owned the building where the guy was backing up his car, the car detonates, he goes bye-bye. He had a vault behind, right?
He had a safe.
A safe.
Yeah. This is actually the first time we've gone on camera talking about that since that happened. But yeah, I had a Reddit post, it was back in like 2012, that went a bit viral, where we had discussed the contents of the safe. And I don't think, from the younger generation, my dad has since passed away, so I can disclose that. But the younger generation knew the value of Reddit and media. And my dad was more of the old school, who thought more of the media influence. So the reach, I guess, on his opinion from the Oprah network would be more so than Reddit. But the truth is, we found a safe. And I had originally intended to use a blowtorch to open the safe. And the Reddit post came back with a strong, resounding, "You'll destroy anything that was in the safe." So we did open the safe, and everyone dismissed it as there wasn't anything in it. But there were things in the safe. There were a list of documents, employee ledgers, casino chips, stacks and stacks of old pennies. But what broke my heart the most is that the employee documents and the documents that were found in that safe were destroyed or were thrown away or dismissed because there weren't currency. So the most painful thing I can tell you is that we did find things in those safes, but because they didn't have any currency or any monetary value, they were thrown away. So we'll never know truly what happened to Richard Chartrand or who did it or why his car blew up when he put it in reverse. Some say it was a mob debt. Some say he just wasn't performing or skimming off the top the way the mob wanted him to in the famous casino story. Mm-hmm. And the answer could have been in the vault, but it's gone now. That's the first time I've ever told that.
That's incredible. It's and this is the one that like also like this was like a bit big kind of story, right? Like the media was all over. Like Geraldo was into this story as well. Right?
Geraldo was into a different safe. That was Al Capone's safe, but he took a lot of flack for opening it. There was nothing in it. Yeah.
There was the Al Capone safe, but I felt like there was another celebrity involvement with this one in Tahoe. But you know, when I'm out there, I live in New York City, so I love going to places where I'm like looking up at the sky and I'm just seeing the vastness of the galaxy of the stars and everything. And you mentioned, I don't know, maybe something down below the water. You ever have an experience of seeing something up there in the skies?
I do. And I'm not going to preface this with the typical cautionary tale everyone says where they're not crazy or they're not high, whatever it was. I'm going to tell the story as it is, and I'm going to let your viewers decide. In Lake Tahoe, we have a close proximity to the Fallon Air Base. And so I'm very familiar with the type of aircraft that come through our skies and the different approaches they make or the different exercises they make. It was part of even Top Gun 2 that was filmed in Lake Tahoe. And I was about 6 to 8 years old, and I was sitting in a hot tub overlooking the lake. My family has had an estate there since 1996. It's right on the lake, and it sits on top of a pile of rocks, which I'll tell in a second the prevalence of this. But looking there, you have almost an undisturbed 180-degree view of the lake. And when the sun sets, there's a certain pink hue that Lake Tahoe sunsets, Carson City sunsets are famous for. I've been around and I truly believe we have some of the most beautiful sunsets around. I don't know if it's the mountains or what it is, but on a clear night, especially when you get that pink hue, it's very obvious to see an object appear and disappear because it stands out in stark contrast to the background. And it was about 5 o'clock at night, 5 to 7, whenever the sun would set in the summer. And I was with my cousin Tara and my sister Alex, who was behind me. I was the youngest, so they were out back and I was just looking out, you know, as essentially the younger cousin just catching the flack. So I wasn't interested in the older sister's conversation. I was interested in the lake. And as I looked out over the lake, I saw a black disc about this big in my perception. So over the lake, it would be a large object across the lake above where Garwoods would be. So this would be looking from East Lake Tahoe to North Lake Tahoe like this. And it appeared. And I saw it sit there and hover, and I couldn't tell if I was seeing things at first or if it was actually there. And as I saw it, it appeared for about, I don't know, 5 minutes or so before I started to get the attention of my sister and my cousin to say, "Are you guys seeing this, what I'm seeing? Because I'm seeing this thing over the mountains." And so they go, "Yeah, I see that." So we were all just looking at it. And it sat there for about 5 or 10 minutes just hovering. And then as fast as it came in, and I watched it appear like a blip just into existence, it shot up and out at a 90-degree angle without a single sound. Just as fast as it was in, it was gone. And I remember turning around to my cousin and my sister to see if they saw that, and they did. And we were so shocked at what we had seen because I've seen so many aircraft, F-16s, you know, F-18s, whatever fighter jets they'd be flying would have a sonic boom. When they go over the house, you could feel them shake the windows. And as a kid, you always want to see and like try to identify the helicopters or the aircraft. And to my life, I've never seen anything like it, but I can certainly tell you there is absolutely no way I've ever seen anything like that again. It was a black triangle that appeared and disappeared up into the sky as fast as it came.
Ever talked to your cousin or sister about it since?
We do talk about it.
Like still to this day?
Yeah, we
Pretty
just with the stigma around it, we just say, "You remember that? Yeah, I remember that. Ever seen anything like it again? No." That's all we can know. I watch with almost a bated breath for these congressional hearings to get answers to what I had seen, but no, I've never reported it, disclosed it, or discussed it really outside of just common parlance.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I appreciate that you don't have to preface it with like, I'm not crazy, but there was this one time. I love that because I talk about that a lot. Like people say that to kind of make it seem like they're cushioning the blow, they're prefacing the thing, where I'm like, no, there's a lot of stories out there, and I think we just have to lean in and kind of tell the stories, because that doesn't make you crazy, it just makes you observant. You had an experience like so many other people did. But with that said, I mean, ghosts. Any experience that you felt like approached something maybe ethereal, kind of ghostly, and in that realm, however you take it?
I have often thought about the story I'm going to tell you, and I can't understand it. I still think about it often, and I don't have an answer for it. More so than the UFO story, because this one was just so personal to me. I almost feel uncomfortable telling it. I could feel myself like squirming in my chair. But there were a few paranormal events leading up to this. I was kind of a scaredy cat when I was a younger kid. It was a big house, and my parents would leave, and I was old enough to be on my own, same age, 6 to 8, maybe a little bit younger. But I recall an event where my parents had left for the night, and this is a house that's built on a pile of rocks right next to a beach. It's a 4-story house, and I was in the 3rd floor, and I had heard my parents leave for the night. They said goodnight to me, and I preferred to sleep in their bed. I don't know, it was more comfortable even if they weren't there. And when they left, there were these 2 masks that my mom had purchased. There were these two masks that I don't know their origin, but they had this very tribal feel to them, both of them, and they had this very primitive look to them, and they were expensive and had that kind of nature, but they were like a moon in the sun. But there was something very off about these masks. I hated them. Every time I looked at them, I would hide my face. I would run past these things because there was just something wrong with them. Anyway, they sat up above their bed in 2 places, and I sat here in the bed, and then there were these 2 double doors. And after they left, about an hour, I was trying to fall asleep. I heard the door open, and I heard footsteps coming into the bedroom. And then in the bathroom, I heard some drawers opening and closing, and then I heard the door close. I was so terrified because I knew my parents had left, and I didn't hear my mom would typically say hi to me, who knew that I was scared or anything. The whole thing was off, so I finally got enough courage to pull the blankets over my head. I walked down the hall, and I looked into the bathroom, and there's a double sink, and there's a bathroom, and then there's a shower, and all of the drawers were open, all the way to their max, and the doors were open in their full vertical position. It was almost as if the bathroom was screaming at me, if I could say that another way. And what really bothered me about that side, because I immediately ran into the bed and had to get the hell out of that room. I ran back to my bedroom and cowered under my sheets for the rest of the time, is if somebody was in the room, which I had asked my mom if anyone came back afterwards, and she responded in the negative, and they were looking through drawers, why would they open all of the drawers at once? You typically open one and then close, and then on and then close. To have every single one open to its max almost felt like a sign to me. Now, I think of the timing, this was in 2002, so I was 8. Around the next few days, this must have been in March 25th of 2002, actually, now I think of the time. So that happened just shortly before March, and the UFO story should have happened in 2001 then. In the next few days, my dad's birthday was on March 25th, and he left in 2002 to go wherever he went for his birthday. Now, on that day, I would explore these rock caves around my house, which were always rumored to be on top of an Indian burial ground or a native burial ground. That's always what people say. But I have noticed living there that the rocks have these large divots in them, where what I only learned later in elementary school, because there's a cultural event center where the Paiute and the Shoshone tribal members will educate the typical citizens on what the ancient cultures were. And they would turn the pine seeds from the pine cones into a type of bread with a mash, with a large cylindrical stone, and then mashed into it. And I have seen throughout that property those markings where there's like a mashing dish. So on one of these occasions, on March 25th, as I do, being an adventurous kid, I'm just looking through the caves, because there are caves throughout Lake Tahoe, and there are quite a few on this property. And I had found a hole that I hadn't seen before. It was about this big, and I could barely squeeze myself through. And so I was adventurous enough to say, I'm gonna go down in that cave. I couldn't see back from the cave, but I could look down at it. And so I'm looking at this cave, and I think, yeah, I can fit. So I squeeze my body down, and I kind of drop into this cave. And it's about a 6x4 maybe entrance. And as soon as I landed, it was just super fine silt that I've never seen before, like a really, really fine silt. Typically you'd find, like, pine needles or pine cones and rocks. It's very rare to find like an undisturbed layer of silt. That's it, because there's animals there. So as I was just struggling, regretting this decision to jump into this dust cave, and I'm looking up at the only source of light, I look at the wall, and in the wall, written in red, believe it or not, is the following phrase, because I've never forgotten it. It said, "Betwixt the house upon the rocks lies the chamber of TEJ." I read that on this perfectly flat wall, and I looked behind me, and behind me there's this perfect view of the beach area and where you could walk down. And this area was formerly the location of the Lakeside Cove Resort, which dates back to like the 20s and the 40s. But there was this rock that you could see through to the beach in this incredibly, strangely voyeuristic window through everybody watching down. But the way that it was angled, as I've walked past that rock probably 1,000 times, I've never noticed that window, or the fact that somebody could have been there watching me or watching this. It was such a bizarre feeling to drop into that cave and see. I scrambled out as fast as I could out of that cave. And I ran straight up to our babysitter who was with us, because my dad was gone for his birthday. And I told him about this. So nobody believed me. And then my brother and my sister went down there, and they saw it. They confirmed. They go, it actually does say that on the wall. The next day, my house burned down to the ground. It was the result of a turtle tank malfunction that my sister had. She had a turtle tank, and she had 2 turtles in it that catastrophically didn't make it, unfortunately. But the heater in it had malfunctioned, and I don't recall the name of the company, and I don't want to get into any issues, but
Right.
There was a lawsuit over it, and apparently it was on recall, and they should have never sold that product. It was a very freaky circumstance, especially given the timing. And the last thing I'll leave you with is that when there is a fire, the most damage you'll have to a property typically isn't the fire. It's the smoke damage and the collateral effects from the fire, because the fire, then there'll be the flood from the fire department that'll put it out. Oh man, as I walk through the house and there's this smell of smoke, anyone that's been through a house fire knows that toxic, plasticky, just smoke smell. You can just, it taints everything. I was a little kid and I looked down on my toys, my micro machines, my Pokemon cards, everything that I had was gone, and I haven't had a sense of attachment to those kind of things since. Not that I've grown out of toys, of course. I just mean it's very difficult to have things and to set up a home when you've seen it burned. So I walk around the house just kind of taking stock as a kid. I'm like 8 years old, just astounded at the past year I must have had. And as I walked through the house, I went into my parents' bedroom, and the two things that were untarnished by smoke and had a perfect ring around them were those two masks. And I have no explanation for that or the previous explanation about the timeline of the bathroom opening and screaming at me, why those masks had made it through the fire, or why just shortly before that time, so 4 months later, all this had happened after I saw that UFO. I don't know. It's the first time I've told this on camera, and I'm actually really uncomfortable about it. It's been quite an experience to relive that since I was 8 years old. But those are the stories I have for you, Lake Tahoe.
You told them fantastically. It's not crazy, but man, it's crazy. Like it's crazy as far as the concept of it. That is wild. Do you also? I feel like we need to option his life as like a movie. You've got like so much going on. And now Carson City, you're doing work here.
Yeah.
Did you pick up any vibes in this town, in this bar, whatever? Do you hear stories where you're like, yeah, you know what, that kind of sounds legit? Any experiences of your own around this place, this town?
Excuse me. I don't know if maybe it's because I grew up with this, but I have a son now. His name's Shepard Landon Lau. He's a year and 9 months, and I love him very much. And I chose immediately to raise him here where I am from, and his father before him. So that cultural impact certainly has touched me. But I was certainly drawn to the building across the street. You know, I work in the Office of the Attorney General, which is on 110 North Carson Street, and on the street right after, there's an old Secretary of State building, which is currently for sale. And no, I'm not a realtor involved in the transaction. I'm just interested in properties, and I'm like a Redfin window shopper. I just love to see property and see what it becomes. It's in my blood, I guess. So I took a tour of this property, and I wanted to feel it. I was drawn to it. And it has a brick exterior that's old. It was part of the old fire department. And what's fascinating about that building is actually in the basement, there are a series of tunnels that connect each one of the major state capitol buildings. I hope I'm not giving away some kind of state secret.
I've heard of these tunnels, for what it's worth.
All right. That's the access point.
Okay.
And they lead to the state capitol, legislature building, the old Office of the Attorney General, and they're the old walkways of the 1800s of how you'd fight fires. So the firemen truly were almost miners in a sense, that they would occupy and move through these tunnels when they'd have an alarm and an alert bell. It's fascinating history that comes through it. And I'm always seeking to find more of it. So you'll find me here at the Fox Brew Pub, and I'll have a beer with you, or you'll find me over the Genoa Bar, where I live in Minden, right across the road. I like the history, and I'll be here for it.
Dude, I love it. And we just spent the first time in the Genoa Bar, even though I've come through here a lot of times. And yeah, that's a fantastic spot. And we're hoping to be filming there this week as well. So, Jordan, I'm incredibly grateful for your stories. And I do have to tell you that as fascinating as your stories are, there's threads of those stories that kind of tap into other stories I've heard. Not to say that you've borrowed stories, but instead I feel like there's weird fabrics out there in a way that people have similar experiences for some reason, whatever reason. So, and actually there's even stuff that you've talked about that weirdly connects to my own childhood and weird stuff that I've had. So I'm very grateful for you sharing all of this.
Well, Aaron, I'm only dissatisfied that it's a one-way interview and I can't hear more about you. But it was a pleasure to meet you,
dude.
I
we'll,
look forward to it, and I look forward to talking to you more.
We're getting you a drink, and then I'll come out at some point. I'll share some spooky stories.
And that was Jordan Laub sharing his story during my visit to the Fox Brewery and Pub in Carson City, Nevada, during a spooky travel tour through the Reno Tahoe Territory. And before that was Alicia from our Patreon group sharing her Easter Bunny story. Keep those stories coming. Email me, contact@talkingstrange.com. You can write up the tales and I will read them, or you can record them yourselves. You can film yourself recording them. Have fun with it. And I'll share them on a future episode of the show. Okay, that is it for me this episode. I'm Aaron Sagers. This has been Talking Strange. Until next time, be kind, stay spooky, and keep it weird.